Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Elliott Robertson. Elliott Robertson is a happiness coach and the author of Say Yes to Love. You can find out more about Elliott Robertson and his wonderful work at elliotrobertsoncoach.com. Welcome, Elliott Robertson.
Thank you.
Now, Elliott Robertson, happiness coach, so many people are unhappy these days, and depression amongst youth has been skyrocketing. What do you think is the single most important reason accounting for this?
Yeah, I think that what really gets in the way for happiness for most people is the monkey mind. And so my book and my approach to coaching really does revolve around going from the mind into the heart. The subtitle for my book, the book's title is Say Yes to Life, and the subtitle is 7 Keys to Living Full Out from Within. And it could have been named Say Yes to Life, 7 Pathways from the Mind to the Heart, because each one of these keys is a pathway that takes you from your mind into the heart and makes, it's not that I want to say anything bad about the mind. It's a wonderful, I'm so grateful for my mind. It's just that it needs to be the caboose on the train. A lot of people get into trouble when they just focus on their mind leading the way and allow, because the mind can be so harsh and judgmental, and it can really get you stuck in quicksand.
You know, I just really appreciate your message, Elliott Robertson. You know, in my work as a medical intuitive healer, and I just kind of want to provide this framework going back to what you're saying. I read the physical body, the energy body, the emotions, the mind, and the soul. And in my view, you are a soul, okay, having a human experience. And this mind that you're talking about, that monkey mind, or another word for it is your shadow, right? Your ego self. When your shadow's in charge and the ego, which is always trying to, compare and try and keep you safe, that can get in the way so often of us, following our soul path. And I feel that, when you can keep your shadow from ruining your life and you're allowing your soul to guide the way, that's when we can experience real bliss.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. And that's really, in a nutshell, what my approach to happiness is all about. I would never work with somebody going to the happiness house, so to speak, through the front door. We don't chase happiness or it eludes us. We really do need to go through the back door, through honoring the heart, through being in touch with the soul, through harmony and alignment. Those are the doors at the back door of the happiness house, a harmony and alignment.
Right. And, from my perspective as a medical intuitive healer, sometimes I joke with my clients and I'll say, hey, if you're about 20 IQ points stupider, you wouldn't be having all these problems, right? You're just kind of going along. But our habit of overthinking and judging and analyzing and criticizing, especially ourselves, tends to tear everything down. Why, as a happiness coach, why do you think the mind and the intellect gets in the way so much of our personal happiness?
Because it does have the judgmental qualities. And the heart is the place that, instead of judging, the heart discerns. The heart's eyes and ears see and hear through the lens of love, through the ears of love, and just really receive the world in a much higher state of consciousness, you might say. The mind does think, of course, and the heart also thinks. And it's a much more trustworthy thinking that the heart does.
Yeah, and there's scientific research to back this up, because your EKG, which is, the scientific measurement of your heart waves, is 30 to 60 times more powerful than your EEG, which is your brain waves. So, Elliott Robertson and I are in total alignment. Live your life from your heart. And it doesn't mean that you're not grounded or practical or logical, but it's like, don't let that judging, analyzing, criticizing aspect of yourself drive you crazy and make you so miserable, right?
That's right. The mind needs to be in service to the heart. The mind needs to appeal to the heart, to ask the heart for direction.
Yes. And even when I'm doing my medical intuitive readings, like, if I'm working with someone in person, I'll do an energy technique that, basically tells the shadow self to take a nap. Let me talk to your soul, right? Because your shadow self, that's always trying to be safe and seeing the world and the universe as this place full of threatening individuals, and it's not too friendly, that's just going to keep you in a state of constant anxiety and misery, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is, it tends to make you more contracted instead of more expansive. And that is one of my 7 keys to living life full out, to living the abundant life, is to just tap into your expansive nature and release the contractions. And that's partly just being aware of when you're being contracted and saying, oh, I could choose to be expansive instead.
Right. Now, one of the unfortunate health statistics today is that suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people in Western society, which, you think, it's young, you're young, these people have their lives ahead of themselves. So among, people ages 17 to 34, again, suicide is the leading cause of death. As a happiness coach, Elliott Robertson, what do you feel needs to happen to shift this perspective so that so many young people don't feel so hopeless and feel like they have to end it all so quickly?
Yes, I have been developing, creating some audio guided visualizations, especially for the young people. And I have been making sure to include in some of them the notion of cycles, introducing the 17-year-olds who might be listening to the guided visualization, introducing them to the 17-year-olds the notion of cycles, the reality of cycles, that just as sure as winter shows up, spring shows up afterwards, and so on and so forth. A lot of people, when you're 17, you just don't have much life experience behind you, and you don't realize that life gives and life takes, life ebbs and life flows. And so if you just have the assuredness that just because things have been bad for the last year or two doesn't mean that they're going to stay this way going forward. If you really have that certainty, that can certainly help. The other thing that I like to work on with everyone of every age is helping people get past the bubble that they might be in. So many times we develop a self-image, especially from the years of 1 to 7, it gets seeded, and then we just go along our lives and people tell us things about ourselves, or parents or teachers or whatever, and we just swallow them without questioning them. And they're very deep in our bones, our self-images. It's much easier to let go of beliefs that are not about who you are than it is to let go of beliefs that you identify with. And so those are the beliefs that I really want to help people question, at least, and have some wiggle room around. And also beliefs about the world being a harsh place, life being difficult. All those beliefs can just be like being trapped in a box or whatever if you really believe them, and if you think that's the way it is and that's the end of the story. So I really like to just put more possibilities on the table, widen people's vision, and help people come into and insight from within. I don't really want to be dogmatic. I like to just set the stage for people to have an aha experience through the exercises that I bring them of, oh my goodness, that's just the story I've been telling myself, and maybe it isn't true. I just love to help people come into an awareness of, oh, maybe everything I thought about the world isn't true. That's a
Right.
very exciting place to be.
Right. And I think that the work that you're doing, Elliott Robertson, is so important. So we started talking about how your mind, that's so prized in our Western civilization, is often not actually your friend, right? And the way that people get programmed, you're not good enough, you don't have enough. The world is this mean, threatening place, right? And it's fun by number one, unwinding those negative beliefs about yourself and about the world, and then secondly, by opening up to a realization of who you are. You're a soul, you're eternal, you survive everything that happens to you until you don't, and that you have a soul purpose even if you haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah.
And, Elliott Robertson, you and I have something in common because I've published 10 books so far. And, two of my books are about how to heal depression naturally without drugs. And my ninth book is called The Little Book of Breath Work. And when I wrote it, one of the groups of people who really motivated me were young people, because by our age, Elliott Robertson, you and I have developed some skills so that if you or I have a bad day, we're like, okay, I'm having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month or even a bad year, you're going to get through it. But as people, no matter what our age, what you want to be doing is you want to be developing, we'll call it life skills or tools, so that when, not if, but when you go through these challenging periods, you'll be able to handle your emotions that come up. You'll be able to notice when there are beliefs that you're holding in mind that are holding you back, right? And even when I do my medical intuitive readings, one of the things that I look at is the mind level and identify what are the beliefs that you're holding that are literally causing you to be sick and miserable, right? Whether it's, when I'm 35, all the women in my family have to get a hysterectomy, or, life is terrible. Albert Einstein said the most important question was whether or not you consider the universe to be a friendly place. So if you don't feel safe and you think everybody's out to get you, then, the place to start is your mind.
I appreciate that. We've been talking about a wide array of things, and I would just like to sort of allow people to hear three things. I'd like to just provide three things to just sort of focus things and make it simple. If I were talking to a youngster right now who was having a lot of depression and stuff, and I was limited to three things, I might just say, first of all, feel all of your feelings. I don't want to overlook that, and I hadn't mentioned that yet. So feel all of the anger, all of the resentment. I'm being radical, but I really want to encourage you to feel the resentment that you have towards whoever it is betrayed you or whatever it is. Feel the sadness, totally. Just allow yourself to always feel whatever feeling arises in that moment, and that'll help it flow through more quickly, and another feeling will come, and just throughout the day, that's what your approach can be. So number one is feel the feelings 100%. Number two is just know that there are cycles, know that things come and go, and that life can get better. And then the third thing is know that you are a spiritual being in a human body. The human body is just your clothing.
Right. Well said. Now, Elliott Robertson, your book is called Say Yes to Life. What does it actually mean to say yes to life?
Saying yes to life is really the same thing as saying yes to your spirit, your heart, saying yes to yourself. When you're celebrating life and saying yes to life, you also are saying yes to who you are. And it's, in other words, saying yes to life is the direction that you're facing. We always have a choice to face the direction of heaven if you want to be religious and use religious terms, or face another direction. And it's one direction or the other. You can't really face both directions in the same moment. So saying yes to life is just deciding, okay, I'm going to face the direction of heaven and move forward in that direction. A saint once said, Saint Catherine, I think it was, once said that heaven is walking in the direction of heaven. It's not a destination that you get to. It's the direction that you're walking in. And that is the key to being in an elevated state, in a happier state.
I love that. Heaven is walking in that direction. Now, Elliott Robertson, happiness coach, what message would you give the roughly 12% of people in Western societies who are taking prescription antidepressant medications?
Well, I really can't give any medical advice, but I do trust that the principles that we've been talking about so far would be helpful to those who are on medication. So I would just sort of repeat everything that we've already been saying about feeling your feelings, about knowing that just because things have been difficult in the past doesn't mean that a miracle isn't possible. I really do believe that in the future, psychologists will be working with people to help people trust that the universe is a friendly place, like you were saying earlier. And I think that if people are able to, in their deepest place in their bones and their deepest hearts, really develop and cultivate some trust in the universe being a friendly place, that could end out the scientists may end out verifying, I don't know for sure, but I'm speculating that could end out being better than medication. I certainly know there is research out there that meditation can be very helpful. So that would be another thing to explore, is going ahead and learning transcendental meditation or some other kind of meditation. And with your doctor's help, testing the waters, dipping your toe in the water and seeing if that might help you no longer be so dependent on the medication.
Right. Now, here we are at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. And, again, we honor everyone wherever we all are on our path. But what we're here to do is to educate the public about natural means. And I certainly have quite a few clients who are on lots of antidepressants, even frequently more than one. But what I find is that their mind and the way they're thinking is making them depressed, right? And they'll say to me, well, I have this chemical imbalance. And I'm like, well, and you're taking the antidepressants, but, examine your thought patterns. How important do you think it is, Elliott Robertson, happiness coach, to retrain the way we think in order to be happy?
That can play a very important role. I mean, of course, everyone is different, but when you've got negative thinking going on, and when you're telling yourself that life should be different from the way your life is, anytime you are thinking thoughts that have should in them, then you're setting yourself up to fall into the trap of being unhappy and being in resistance and just living your life either in self-pity that things aren't the way you think they should be, or being in complaining mode, or being jealous, or telling God that life is unfair. The should beliefs can all lead you down a road that will just really block happiness and keep you facing a direction that is just not going to help you at all, like self-pity or jealousy or bitterness.
Right. Now, let's say you're listening to this interview and we realize, gosh, I've got a lot of ants in my head. So what are ants? Automatic negative thoughts. I've got a lot of ants in my head, and I realize, gosh, I've got all these patterns of negative thinking. So Elliott Robertson, happiness coach, how can we go about getting the ants out of our head?
Well, my approach is to cultivate new habits and then trust that the old habits will slowly, maybe quickly fade away when the better habits are cultivated. So I'm always encouraging people to choose affirmations to work with. I have a lot of affirmations in my audio recordings and my guided visualizations. Um, and also to just really spend more time paying attention to the things that you're grateful for, as opposed to going around cursing life. I know that I used to be a very bitter person. I would just walk around New York City. I would notice that there were people at cafes that I couldn't afford, sitting in the beautiful sunshine in an outdoor cafe, and immediately I would be bitter. Or I would go to the grocery store and people would have a bunch of goodies in their basket, and I couldn't afford much because I was down to my last few dollars. And I would be, this is so unfair. Why do they have more money than I do? And over the years, I have become totally bitter free. And part of it has been because I've been focusing on gratitude.
Yeah, I love that. And as people, like you said, we go through these seasons, right, in life. And I know for myself, when I go through hard times in my life, one of the things that I make myself do is write a gratitude list in my journal. And for me, what I notice about myself is that if I can come up with 20 things that I feel grateful for, that will shift my mood. And usually during my prayer and meditation, first thing in the morning, I I think of all the things that I'm grateful for, and I start making a list in my head, and I feel grateful for this, and I feel grateful for this person to be in my life, and I feel so blessed about this. So, and as you know, Elliott Robertson, there's a difference between thinking and feeling. So, and again, for those who are really listening to this broadcast and really trying to figure out how to get the ants out of their head, what's the difference between thinking about what you're grateful for and feeling what you're grateful for?
Yeah, I do believe in gratitude journals too. And I do encourage people to not just sit down at a piece of paper and think, I guess I should be grateful for my health because my health is good, and then write that down. I really encourage people to write it down if the feeling of gratitude is there. That needs to be part of the gratitude journal experience. I also like to encourage people to include on the gratitude journal list some very deep and important things. If it's real, it always needs to be honest things that are on the gratitude list, not just things that somebody told you to include on the list. But if you do feel gratitude for your capacity to grow spiritually,
Mm.
then go ahead and put that on the list. If you feel gratitude for your heart's capacity to love and to go into tenderness and to step away from judgment and to have compassion, you can put that on the list too. I like the gratitude list to, include the cat that's sitting on your lap. Oh, that's so important. All the relationships are important. And whatever else might come to mind that might be part of your physical environment or whatever, or the promotion that you just got. And I also like to encourage people to look a little bit deeper when they're working on gratitude lists and really include the spiritual gratitude as well.
Right. I love that. Now, your wonderful book, Say Yes to Life, in it you talk about 7 keys to abundant living. What are your 7 keys to abundant living, Elliott Robertson?
Yeah, the 7 keys are say yes to your expansiveness,
Hmm.
say yes to your uniqueness,
Hmm.
say yes to the new, say yes to knowing what you want. That's not say yes to what you want, it's say yes to knowing what you want. And when I say that, I mean to knowing what your heart's desires are.
Hmm.
Just really listening to your heart and honoring your heart in that way. And then the 5th one is say yes to freedom from the past.
Hmm.
And then the 6th is say yes to grief. And the 7th is say yes to joy and happiness.
Oh, I just love that. Now let's go into saying yes to grief, because again, if you think about, we're talking, we talked in the beginning about suicide. And, we're all going to die. It's guaranteed 100%. Even those of us health nuts and take supplements, exercise, meditate, do yoga, we're all going to die. So when people are committing suicide, they're speeding up the process. So when we go through these periods of grief, which is actually an inevitable part, sooner or later, we're all going to feel all our emotions. What would you say to someone who's going through a period of grief about how they might be able to more easily move through that time?
Yes, I think we already covered this in another context, but I do like that question, so I'll go ahead and repeat. The main key to going through the grief process is to just be present to every feeling that comes up and to allow every feeling that shows up to just be what it is and live as it is and just be aware of your feelings and let them be as they are, and to just fight nothing, resist nothing, surrender to the feelings, you might say.
Right. And, here in the US, the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50 is now drug overdose. So we've got people committing suicide, we have people overdosing on various medications. Second leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50. So if you look at those, one of the common denominators is trying to escape the way we feel. So how can we find peace within these periods of discomfort so that we don't have to turn to opioids, alcohol, and some of these drugs that are very, very damaging for us?
Yes. I think that the main key would be just leaving the mind behind and going into the heart. And part of that can be accessing the power of the imagination. The imagination can help you see yourself in a new way and see the possibilities that life is providing for you in a new way. It can open up doors for you to really have a new experience, a new perception, a new relationship with the entire world. The relationships that we have with ourselves and with the world, they really do need to be um, they really do need to be full of love and full of and without any judgment.
Right. And one of the words that I find myself using all day long these days is the word compassion, which is, whenever you're going through a hard time in your life, whether it's physical pain or emotional suffering, or just living your life, just being a human, is bringing the quality of compassion to whatever you're doing. Because when we're compassionate, we're in our heart, we're in this expanded heart place that Elliott Robertson is talking about. We're you're out of your mind. And what I mean by that is you're not in judgment, right? You're not saying I should be something different than I am. I should be someplace different than I am. You're compassionately holding in mind that this is where you are. Maybe it's not completely comfortable. Maybe you're doing the best you can. Maybe you're not doing the best you can. And that's okay too. So how can we cultivate more of these heart qualities like compassion in our everyday life?
Yes, that's a good question. And I really think that part of the journey from judgment to compassion is allowing yourself to detect who you are or to discern who you are. Or you might want to imagine somebody on a beach with one of those machines that sort of goes off and clicks or whatever if it detects metal. So often the gold within us, the jewels within us, our uniqueness is sort of hidden. We end out just going around with masks on, and we don't necessarily really get in touch with and connect with our own uniqueness and our own brilliance and our own genius and the glory that's within us. So going around with that sand detector, with that metal detector on the beach, and noticing when it clicks, and when you, that's the place where you're going to discern the bright light that has been placed within you at your birth, and the capacity to be compassionate that your heart was born with. That's how we're designed. We come into the world with a lot of glory, and then the world teaches us that we're much smaller than that. We never learn about all of the magnificence that we have within ourselves when we're in the educational system or anything like that.
Right. You know, from my perspective as a medical intuitive, one of the things that I look at is whether or not you have a relationship with your true self. So what do I mean by that? The most important relationship you will ever have with anybody is your relationship with yourself. And often, instead of having a relationship with your true self, which is who you really are, which is, I mean, you're, as a soul, you're powerful, you're timeless, you're resilient, right? You're blissful naturally. So some of the personalities that you can have with yourself that kind of get in the way: victim, when you're in your poor me, right? So when you're in poor me, you're always thinking about being too busy or too tired, or how the world is doing you wrong or other people are doing you wrong. Another personality that can get in the way of your relationship with your true self is a bully, right? So you're pushing yourself. Why didn't you figure this out yet? Why are you not better yet? Why haven't you made more money yet? Why are you ... right? This intimidator factor. And so on. There are many ways that this ego mind that we started talking about can get in the way of you really recognizing who you are and honoring who you are, and holding yourself in mind with true heartfelt compassion. Now, so you're a happiness coach, Elliott Robertson. How do you actually help people to be happier? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, for starters, no one can make you happy. So I don't really work with happiness with my clients. Earlier, I was saying that we're going through the front door of the happiness house isn't going to work. The door just isn't going to budge open. So the focus with my clients is about other things. For example, helping my clients to take ownership of their life as opposed to being a victim, to take ownership of whether they're happy or not, how they're responding to the circumstances in their life, as opposed to reacting, as opposed to blaming. So a lot of the focus can be on not blaming, not complaining, not being a victim, and just and not being shamed. That's a very important one too. And just the foundation really is taking responsibility for how you respond to the conditions and the circumstances in your life. And that has to do with choice too. There is such a thing as being happy for good reason. Maybe you got promoted today, and so you want to have a party, and that's wonderful. Being happy for good reason is a good thing. And also it's possible to be happy for no reason. And I think the mystics were really good at that. St. Francis got pushed into a ditch once. It's a true story. He ran into 4 guys or 5 guys, and they pushed him into a ditch. And the next thing you know, he was having some laughter. Falling into the ice and snow didn't deter him from his elevated state of consciousness and his divine laughter.
So what does it actually mean to be happy for no reason?
You know what? I think one way to describe it is to just say that you're in touch with the undercurrent of joy that's always in your heart. Happiness can be a tricky word. So sometimes I just go with the word joy instead, because a lot of people have a lot of different associations with the word happy, and a lot of the associations have to do with things in the outer and achievements and accomplishments, and then I'll be happy. The undercurrent of joy is a given, and we have it from the moment we're born until we leave the earth.
Right. You know, in my work as a medical intuitive healer, I talk about the pain body. So, what is your pain body? The pain body is the aspect of you where you store your old hurts and grievances. And this is both physical pain and emotional suffering. One of my 10 books is called The Difference Between Pain and Suffering. And this is sort of apropos to what we're talking about, because one day I was driving down the road. You know, all of us authors, we get our ideas when we're basically, our mind is doing nothing, right? When we're receptive. And my guides told me that I needed to write an article called The Difference Between Pain and Suffering. So I'm like, okay. So I go off, when I get to my computer, write this article in about 30 minutes. And then what I noticed on my blog, what I found was someone was reading that article every day. And so that there's thousands of people every day who are wanting to understand, what is pain, what is suffering, what's the difference. So what I find, going back to what we're talking about, which is joy, which is happiness, is you can't be in your joy if you live your life from your pain body. So what do I mean by that? There's a lot of ways of saying this. If I'm always focusing on what's wrong, whether it's be the pain in my hip or my arthritis or my headache, or what I think I don't have, or what I think I haven't achieved, or who's done me wrong today. When I live my life and I look at life from that perspective, I'm living in my pain body. On the other hand, you also have a light body, and that's another word for your soul. And when you live your life from your light body, then you can ask the questions, like, even when you go through a hard time, why did I create this? Right? If you go through something challenging in your life, you go, for what reason did my soul attract this experience? Why did I create this experience? And when you live your life from your light body, what you'll notice is that your life is full of synchronicities. I mean, here we are talking to Elliott Robertson about happiness, which is something that we all profess, at least, to want more of. So you see the synchronicities, you see the miracles, which is simply a change in perspective, right? And, in my view, one of the ways to be happier is to stop living from your pain body, right? And to start living from your light body. So what would you say to that, Elliott Robertson, happiness coach?
I think that's brilliant, and I never really framed it in that way. So I so appreciate the gift of another perspective, another way of looking at the path to happiness. Thank you so much.
Right, because the bliss is always there, right? Whether it's simple as just noticing the breath coming in and out of your nostrils, right? Or the sunshine, dappling through the trees. It's always there. And it's not about winning the lottery, or everybody thinks if I'm just rich and famous, then my life will be easier. And I tell you, as a medical intuitive, I've worked with those people, and they're not always happier.
I could add something to that.
Yes.
I really think the role of acceptance on the path to happiness is essential. You're not going to find yourself being happy unless you have acceptance in your heart, in your experience. And the way to, part of the acceptance needs to include being accepting of your resistance to noticing the sunshine, noticing the sunset. There can be resistance sometimes. There is a shadow part of us that does not want to be happy, perhaps, or that does not want to grow spiritually. And accepting, oh, right now I don't want to be happy. Accepting that and letting that part of you come along for the ride instead of pushing it away. The key is to have those parts of you that you accept and embrace with love, have them in the back seat of the car. They're not going to be at the steering wheel. That's the main way that acceptance can really help you, is that it includes every part of you and lets them come along for the ride in the back seat.
Right. And sometimes, because we're talking about happiness here, from my perspective, sometimes we go through what I call a breakdown to breakthrough. So what do I mean by this? And that sometimes we're going on along in our life, and whatever, and the structures that we've set up in place no longer work. So let's say you've been doing a job for a period of time, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and it was good and it served a purpose, and it doesn't anymore. So whether it's a job or a relationship or a friendship or a house or anything, sometimes these structures that we have really relied on, these pillars of our life, literally crumble. And we find ourselves in these times when we're having a breakdown. It's really especially hard when it all breaks down all at once, right? And then we're having these, oh my gosh, moments. But sometimes these breakdowns are necessary in order for a breakthrough to happen, right? So what do you advise, Elliott Robertson, when you're working with clients where their old structures in their life don't work anymore and all that needs to go away so they can find their way to happiness?
Yeah, once again, that's another moment when acceptance is key. Accepting the breakdown absolutely as it is. And after you've had enough time to feel the feelings and to have acceptance for the situation, allowed yourself to really experience whatever it is that's arising within you, that can help you go to the next phase, if you want to call it that, of feeling some invincibility. Invincibility can be experienced when you are not telling yourself, oh, I have to fix this and return back to where I was a month ago before the breakdown. It can become available when you are really accepting that there was a breakdown, accepting that your life is falling apart, and then allowing yourself to wonder what good things are on their way to you, just assuming that the universe is friendly and that this can be an opportunity for a new beginning, a new chapter in your life. When you've got that kind of momentum going and you've got your thinking and your feeling self attuned in that direction, you can reach a place of feeling invincible and just knowing that whatever happens in your life, it's not going to separate you from your glory. It's not going to accept you from your receptivity to love, from your capacity to love. Nothing can take you away from your uniqueness.
Very, very profound words of wisdom. I really, really appreciate what you're saying, right? Right? Very, very profound words of wisdom. So as we wrap up our interview here, when people, we're all trying to figure out how can we be just a little bit happier. So what are your final thoughts, Elliott Robertson? How can we be just even a little bit happier?
Yeah, that's a wonderful place to start from. And I'm so grateful for your asking that question, Catherine Carrigan, because it's really good to set up a situation where you're going to sort of almost guarantee a win. If you can just notice that, oh, a week ago I was sort of in a funk, and now maybe my happiness level has gone up a notch. That can really help. So certainly gratitude list practice, like you were suggesting, can be one way to see if that can help you raise your happiness level. Another thing that you can focus on is just one relationship or one area of your life getting better, as opposed to thinking, oh, I want to be happy across the board.
Right.
And then when you decide, okay, I want to be happier in my relationship with my brother or whatever, or the neighbors next door, whatever it is, then that can sort of be the anchor point for whatever it is you want to do over the next 7 days.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can find out even more about how to heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been Elliott Robertson, happiness coach, and we've been talking about his wonderful book, Say Yes to Life. You can find out more about Elliott Robertson at elliotrobertsoncoach.com. And remember, when you live in your light body and see yourself as an invincible soul and hold yourself with compassion, you're more likely to feel happy. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.